Recording is in progress, and this time with Natasha Miller. How are you?
I'm good, really good.
Thank you for joining me today. And your story seems pretty amazing. So I like to do a little bit is kind of do the Wayback Machine. And what happened on the way back all these years ago that helped kind of spur you on to where you are now?
Well, unfortunately, what happened were some pretty negative things, and I really don't know where I would be today if those negative things didn't happen. But I have to say in advance that if I had to do it over again, I would choose to have been treated better and cared for and felt safe than enjoying and experiencing the incredible life I have now. So I'm not one of those people that say if I had to change anything, I wouldn't do anything different
Yeah.
because yeah, no. So yeah, I grew up in the mid 80s in the middle of the country. So two middles that didn't really work out for me. There wasn't access to help and mental health uh, assistance. There was no Oprah, no Dr. Phil, uh, none of those trailblazers that helped normalize challenges that human beings are going through. So I was stuck in a rut of living in a very dysfunctional and um, abusive household. But I wiggled and scratched and clawed my way out of that hole and, just kept plugging at it forever, even now to get to, the things that I want to do and accomplish.
So let's go into a little bit, let's elaborate a little bit. So tell me a little bit about what was mainly the dysfunction and how you talked about not wanting to go back. And a lot of people do say, "Oh, I wouldn't change it. It hardened me. Maybe the person I am, and maybe
Yeah.
what was so bad
I
that
wouldn't
made you
wish
change
that
it?"
upon anyone. And I think with my own daughter, I would not want that experience for her. So, abused mentally,
Mhm.
emotionally, physically by my mother. Um, my father was not abusive to me at all, but he also, I mean, complicit is too strong of a
Mm.
word. He wasn't able to find it in himself to stop that madness. And, I have two little brothers who were witness to this, but also probably endured their own form of abuse of having to watch it. But also, I was gone at 16 and they were 4 and 8 years younger than me. So
Mm.
I don't really know what they endured.
What, sometimes, well, a lot of times you hear this about kind of the male aspect of this and the abuse and stuff. It sounds a little different for me from a woman. Just you think of this nurturing person, the mothering figure. What was your mom like, and why can you surmise like that she would
Mm.
do this?
Since writing the book, revelations have been coming out about truths and secrets are being revealed and the closed locked doors are being opened. So I now have a better picture of why she is the way she is. But even if I knew that as a young girl, I don't know how much it would have helped. As an
Mm.
adult, I understand more and I'm empathetic and um but as a child, there's no rhyme or reason as to why somebody's hurting you. It doesn't matter why.
So how was your, I mean, has your relationship evolved with your mother throughout the years, or what has that been like?
Off and on, there were positive communicative times, but I have recently discovered or realized that having her in my life is not good for my mental health. And no one else is really in the family. So I've chosen not to be in her realm, and it's been so much better. So I'm proud of that decision. It was not an easy one to take, but it was absolutely the right one.
Was there a particular moment when you said this has to stop and I need to move on from this?
Well, let me just admit to you, there were a couple of moments. One uh, where she reacted to something and started acting out on me, but not only me, my two brothers, which, if somebody's hurting my brothers, it's almost worse if you're hurting me. But two, this is the sad part. The sadder part is that I think it was 2 years ago, my daughter, who would have been 24 at the time, looked up at me with this pleading look and she said, "Mom, you don't realize it. Your mom is still abusive to all of you." And I thought, well, shit. That was pretty intense and it took me aback. So instead of remaining in it, I removed myself from it.
It's interesting that your child told you that.
Oh yeah.
From the mouths of babes, right? On some level. How did that affect your relationship with your daughter growing up like that?
Oh, well, in general, I was terrified that I was going to treat her not well. I really thought that I was going to have that anger, hatred, abusive feeling toward her because it's all I knew. And I was 24 at the time that I was pregnant, and I went to a therapist, and after 3 sessions, she did the most amazing thing for me. Now, whether she knew it to be so or just knew that I needed to hear this, I'll never know. I don't remember who it was, but she said, "Natasha, you're not going to hurt your child." And I just believed her. And I walked out of that session and I knew for sure that I wasn't going to abuse my child. And I was an excellent mom. I was a little different than the other moms. I may have overcorrected in the attention and love and all of that, but not to a degree where she's dysfunctional.
What do you mean? I mean,
She's not super spoiled, but emotionally she's spoiled because I remember her saying to me when she was in high school, she yelled down from the steps. She was writing a paper and I had previously asked her to read it and I was talking to her about it. And she said, "Mama, none of my other friends' parents want to know what they're writing about. They don't really care. And you really do." And I think that was a compliment. I don't think she was trying to get me out of her hair.
feels like there's almost this generational shift in parenting, throughout,
Yeah.
I feel that like I'm 43 and my daughter's 10. And it feels like that today's parents are just more attentive to their children.
Hopefully.
Like when I was in the 80s growing up, I mean, my parents are awesome, but there were like stretches of like 9-10 hours where I don't think they knew where we were most days. Like just out riding bikes.
You know
and
what?
stuff.
That's interesting because in a healthy household, if you're in a very safe neighborhood, back in the day playing in the
Yeah.
creek and running around the neighborhood until the sun was about to go down.
Yeah,
I mean, there's something cool about that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Like who lets their kids do that now? I don't know, man.
It's a different world.
It's a different world. You'd be like, "Whoa, what type of parent are you? You let your kids just stay out all times of the day and stuff like that." So let's talk about after you left home or after that portion of your life. What was life like for you at that point?
I left home at 16. It was Christmas Day and my mother was on another tirade and she was chasing me around the house with a butcher knife and threatening to kill me. And although she had done similar things to me my entire life, I felt this imminence of harm. I also must have had some newfound courageousness and bravery. And I finally called 911 and the police came and eventually I was taken to a homeless youth shelter. And after that experience, I lived with my grandmother for a time, but then shortly after that, I've been on my own since, working full time as a hostess at a restaurant because I was not old enough to serve food.
Yeah. What was that period of your life like when you were on your own?
I mean, it was confusing. I was acting as an adult. I was acting and with people that were 10, 15, and 20 years older than I was. And, I was in the restaurant industry and that's very social and that A lot of people go out drinking after work, and I had to navigate that world as a very young girl. And, you know, I was, I grew up too fast. Thankfully, I didn't really, like I basically pretended to drink.
Mhm.
I've never had a taste for alcohol, thank God. So, I'd order, back then it was Cosmopolitans, so embarrassing. Um, or amaretto sours.
Mhm.
And I would sip on them and pretend to drink them. And, if push came to shove, I'd go to the bathroom, pour it out, and order another one to just seem like I was participating. I didn't have the confidence to say, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was always a struggle. I remember, I can't remember what my rent was, but I remember the landlord knocking on my door and me running around looking in different pockets of my pants and jackets and drawers for the, $1 and $5 tips to put together enough to pay rent, most likely 1 to 2 weeks after it was due. So, the responsibility that comes with living on your own at that young age. I mean, it's hard that kids are responsible for their own homework, right? And their own um, games and practices, much less paying rent and utility bills and going to a job.
And so you were living by yourself at this point.
Mhm.
And what did you think about your future sitting there? You're in your place, you're going to work. What kind of future did you think you were going to have?
I really wanted to be a performance artist. So I'm a jazz vocalist, I'm a classically trained violinist. So I knew that there was hope for me. I did have some talent, and I definitely had some gusto, and I had a lot of passion. So for my career, I figured I needed to get out of Des Moines at some point. And my heart and soul was to go to New York and maybe be on Broadway, which is pretty funny since I don't act and I don't dance, but it's okay.
It's fine.
Dreams don't have to be, like seriously relevant to your abilities. But I ended up coming to California when I was 24, and my life really began to erupt then in a positive way. And the inklings and the startings of that eruption began in Des Moines. As I was playing violin and singing for social and corporate events, and working not just, the restaurant jobs, but I would even take on like Manpower and Kelly Services work, handing out flyers to people, risking my reputation by being, the annoying girl handing out flyers. And I remember seeing someone that I knew in the Des Moines, we have these catwalks throughout downtown because of the winter. So there's like a mile of catwalks from like the third or fourth floor of all these business buildings. And someone was like, what are you doing here handing out these newsletters? And I'm like, I am getting out of Des Moines. That's what I'm doing.
Is that a thing in Des Moines? Is it like people trying to leave, or it's like, well, you're strange if you're trying to leave? What's the mentality there?
I think in general, people that grow up there, when I grew up there, especially, I couldn't speak for now. They're family oriented. They kind of go with what's given to them or what's expected of them. There's not a huge amount of pushing forward. That doesn't mean that no one has from Des Moines or from what the high schools I went to, but most of the people I went to high school with, I graduated with 360 people, I think that's right, are there or
Okay.
somewhere in Iowa with a family, and some of them
Sounds
may have the same job that they've had since, graduating.
right. Sounds fairly typical in places like that. I mean, I grew up in a military family, and we lived all over the world, and we had a stint in like Kansas and different places in Midwest. And it was always like we would get there and we were definitely the outsiders.
You were like, what is going on
What's
here?
this strange environment where everybody grew up together?
Yeah.
And it feels like it's just this constant stream going towards the same place,
Yes.
And
It's
very
comfort.
interesting. It's comfort.
Yeah,
It's very
level of
interesting. There's
comfort.
places like that dotted all throughout the United States,
Not a horrible thing, just
No.
not a
No.
thing for people that are motivated to do more and more and more and always learning and growing and pushing themselves.
Is it hard to kind of overcome kind of getting out of the gravity of that planet of, when
It
everybody
was,
else is not kind of
yeah, I
thing?
mean, the first couple of years of living in San Francisco, I was trying to de-farm myself.
The
Now,
farm.
did I live anywhere near a farm or on a farm? No, but that's what I thought everyone thought of me. I thought
Mm.
as soon as I say I'm from Iowa, they're going to immediately, and actually a lot of people did. Oh, did you grow up on a farm? So I dyed my hair blue right here.
Uh-huh.
I got a belly button piercing. I was trying so hard to become much cooler than, I thought I seemed.
Did
I
you?
mean, it
Yeah.
worked for a minute.
Right. Right. What is interesting, the viewpoints that people have of places. And maybe a lot of those people in San Francisco had never been to
Oh
Iowa.
yeah, mostly.
Probably not, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they haven't,
right.
so what's their association with Iowa? Something they saw
Yeah.
on TV. It's like, oh, I mean, there is a decent amount of farmland and stuff
There's a
there.
lot of
I mean,
farmland.
there
I
is.
grew up in Des Moines, which was 350,000 people at the time. It's much bigger, I think. And I mean, there wasn't a cornfield in sight. We had to go a half hour to farmland
Yeah.
or more.
So what was that like being in San Francisco? And which is, it's a crazy place. Like it's crazy. I mean, it's like the
It's
city.
so crazy. That
Yeah.
first year, I went down into the Castro, which is our
Mhm.
LGBT plus
Yeah.
area. And every Halloween back in the day, they had these huge parties with drag queens and people barely dressed, and also people dressed in the wildest outfits. And I remember this year they had all these rolls of bubble wrap on the ground so that when you walked, you would hear the pop, 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 pop.
Mhm.
It was just one giant party. And I mean, can you imagine coming from little old Des Moines, Iowa, come into this scene, especially with a bunch of, a huge gay population? There was a gay population in Des Moines, but it couldn't be as overt,
No way.
right?
No way.
And so I hadn't witnessed in person, experienced being around that. And I was just like, oh, wow. That was one of my first experiences or my first memories.
So interesting, right? Like you were in this tiny place, small place, and then you expanded your horizon
Hmm.
and you saw these different things. It's like mind blowing. And I always think that's a partially what happens with a lot of people is they just don't have the exposure.
Yeah, it's
And
important for
you
that
know,
exposure. Yeah, I mean, listen, exposure to other countries. I have been in cultures. I've been to Italy before, but I just got back from 2 weeks of being there. And I'll tell you what, learning about the lifestyle and what's important to that whole country and the preservation of ruins and history. But also, you know what was a shock to me? The shock was there were no homeless people, no encampments,
hmm,
no needles on the ground, nobody coming down from a meth bender. And I was like, where is everyone? Because I'm surrounded by that.
of
But
course.
I love where I live. But it was an interesting juxtaposition. Of course, there's a little bit more socialism happening in social
Mhm.
care in Italy. And I don't know where those people are, right? I don't. It may be a horrible situation. I haven't looked into it.
You
Is
know what?
important.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is just when you take the time to go outside of yourself and you become uncomfortable and you really see what life could be like, that's when you start growing. And that's when
Mhm.
things start changing. And that's when you start seeing other people in a very human way when it happens.
Yes. I mean, I came to San Francisco. It was hard to adjust for the first year. But then as I did become adjusted, I was like, okay, I want that. I want that. I don't want that. Right. So, how can I get these things and avoid these things? And what kind of maneuvers or moves do I have to make to get to where I want to go?
What lessons did you learn as you were coming of age, you're in your 20s? now you removed a decent amount of time from Des Moines, Iowa. What did you start learning about yourself that you didn't know when you
Mm.
were growing up?
Well, I think because I wasn't taken care of properly,
Mm.
that I was always looking for someone to save me and take care of me. And I found a man who was 9 years older than me in Iowa, who was an architect, who I thought would be that person. Now, I still had dreams and I wanted to do things for myself. But what I didn't realize is after we married and had our baby and a couple of years passed and things weren't working out, I didn't realize my ability to out earn him at such a young age. And we did have a child support and alimony agreement. It was very unofficial. We barely had any money, but he was paying me some alimony and child support. And after I got this job at an ad agency, and then I got a bump in salary, I was making more than he was. And there was such pride in that and surprise that I went to him and I said, listen, I'm I'm good. I don't need the alimony. You can still give me child support for, we're sharing Bennett's care. And so that may have been a turning point of me realizing that I didn't need anyone to take care of me,
Yeah.
financially at least.
How about on the other aspects of things, like emotionally and socially? Where were you at this point?
I mean, seriously, I was just always looking for someone to love me and to fill in the holes of the family that I didn't have. And that did not serve me terribly well. Some decisions and choices and people weren't great. And I would say it's mostly, my choices versus they're horrible people. That's not,
Mm.
in hindsight, I can say that now
Yeah.
better, right? I was attracted to the wrong things and I needed the wrong things. I am now, unfortunately, so independent. I'm practically undateable at this point. So I've
Really?
again, another, overcorrection. But we'll see. But I doubt myself now because of those inherent things that I'm not sure I can combat. Do I still feel like I need someone to love me or to take care of me in order for me to feel fulfilled? I don't want to rely on somebody else.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of your life has been it's the pendulum swung one way and then it swung the other way
yeah.
really hard. And there wasn't a middle ground in there.
I don't know. I also think maybe the middle ground isn't terribly interesting to me. So I have a lot of growing to do still.
Of course.
Like I'm very well aware of that. And I'm looking forward to the challenge and the things that I'll learn.
When you say the middle grounds may not be that interesting to you, what do you mean by that? Like, what's the larger meaning behind that? I mean, it sounds maybe, I guess, kind of obvious, but maybe not also. Like,
as far as relationships are concerned, I see people and you can never know what's going on inside of somebody's relationship if you just see them out and about.
Of course.
And even if you just hear one side of their story, right? But the people that have been together for years and years and years and years and, barely talk to each other at an outing or, are on the phones when they're together the whole time, that's not terribly interesting to me.
No.
So I don't need, a space heater.
I don't need a space heater. That's a good quote.
Yeah.
Actually, it's interesting. You say you're growing. I talked to crazy amounts of people, 400 plus people on this whole podcast have done. And I've had several dating app people on. I just find the whole thing very crazy and interesting.
Yeah.
I've been married for almost 18 years. It's been wonderful. Honestly, totally true. It's been wonderful. But I am interested in like how people date in this current age. Anyways, this one guy, Tal Sloninsky, he created this app. It's called Our Love. You may want to check it out. It's really good. It's like, actually, you don't even need to have a partner to do it. It's just, it could just be for you or for you and your partner. And it basically uses all of this research and technology to help you become a better partner to someone.
That's a great, useful app.
I've been using it and I feel like things are great. And I was like, man, this is awesome. Like, this is like step by step, how to become a better partner to potentially someone, or you could do it with your partner. I don't know. I just thought about that. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know. If I figure I'm meeting all these people, I might as well tell other people about certain things I find out about. Why not? you know. Um, but it seems like that. Why would you want to have a relationship where it was just very dull and it was very uninteresting? And I think a lot of people end up staying in those type of relationships over
Yeah.
time, over this kind of almost scarcity mentality of, well, I don't know if I'll find someone, or they're afraid to be alone.
Right. And in my case, a couple of times, I broke up with people that it broke my heart to do it because I knew I'd be hurting them.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to put off that pain as long as I could, but then it was worse for me. So yeah, to be continued. We'll see
Yeah, for
what I
sure.
come up with.
How did so let's go through some of your work life here as things started progressing. I mean, you're working super hard, working different types of jobs and stuff. How did things start progressing to get to where you currently are? How did that dream start building?
Well, I had Entire Productions, which is my core business since 2001, and it really was more of a lifestyle business. It paid for my lifestyle, which wasn't extravagant, but there wasn't an idea, nor was there the money to hire other people and expand. In 2013 through 15, I started having the mindset to grow. And in 2015, I did the Goldman Sachs 10K SB, that stands for 10,000 Small Businesses program at Babson College, and talked to some mentors and advisors. And that's when my company that was already at like 1.5 million in revenue, that's when it started growing by 65% year after year. And so if you wanted to just encapsulate the why, it was my readiness plus going for really good information in the form of courses, mentorship, advisement.
So as this is growing and it's getting bigger, you're experiencing more success. Did you ever look back and think about where you came from during
All
that
the
time?
time. I still do all the time. And it drives my daughter crazy because
Yeah.
my mentality is, oh my God, I have a best-selling book as of the Wall Street Journal and USA Today list. Like, that isn't for me. I'm just the
Mm.
little girl from 29th Street. And she's like, oh, when are you going to realize you're not the little girl from 29th Street anymore? You're, well-known, very successful. And I know those things, but I am the little girl from 29th Street still.
Yeah, it's I talk to people about this all the time. This kind of almost this imposter aspect of things, like, well, this shouldn't be for me. I mean, look where I came from, Des Moines, Iowa, right? Like,
Yeah.
nobody does this where I'm
Right. And
from.
I come from a family of writers, excellent writers, much better writers than I am. And now I'm an award-winning, best-selling author. And, my grandmother wrote 7 books for a traditional publisher. My dad's a poet and an excellent writer. My daughter's a writer. And it feels like, well, I kind of in my mind think, well, I'm not really the writer in the family, but I have to stop doing that. I am a writer in this family
Yes,
of writers, and I've achieved these things.
most definitely. It's amazing to talk to people. That's why I like doing this, who are very successful and doing different things, because it's like you said, it's hard to judge something when you just see two people out and you see this kind of veneer, this curtain. It never tells a story. And someone may say, "Well, look at all this revenue. Look at all
Yeah.
this stuff." They would never see the things you feel about yourself
Right.
and the insecurities and the imposter feelings that someone may have or may not have.
I
with
have
that.
them all the time. I push past them faster and easier now, but that doesn't keep them from popping up.
Yeah. I wonder, like, where do you see this going from here? You've done all this stuff. How do you continue to push forward and continue to work on yourself when these things happen, that you don't have this feeling as much?
Well, I'm always working on myself. I am definitely an avid lifelong learner, But now I think it's the time for me to give back to other people, not necessarily always reaching down and pulling people up, but even reaching out and I'm helping entrepreneurs with their endeavors, trying to teach them the things that I didn't have access to when I was, first starting the business. Now also teaching people how to write, publish, and market their own books, specifically their life story, because I think that's really important. I think people that want to write a book about a subject matter that they're an expert at is fine too. But the reactions I'm getting to my life story are so passionate and so robust. I'm not sure I would be experiencing that if I wrote a how-to book on how to scale and grow your business by 50% or more. I don't know. I haven't done it yet, but
Yeah.
I'm guessing that people are more aligned with who I am as a person, because in the book, they get to know who I am.
Yeah.
Like there are things in the book I never told my best friend or my therapist, but I decided it was just fine to publish on paper
Yeah, why
and
not?
Audible for everyone to listen to.
It's a different approach. Those things. Talk to me a little bit about entrepreneurship. Is it
In
for
general?
everyone? Is it for everyone?
Oh, no. It is not. Listen, entrepreneurship, it's more than just buying, acquiring, or inheriting a business and running it, right? That's a job. And, being a business owner doesn't mean that you're an entrepreneur, right? If you're an entrepreneur, you're not risk adverse, right? You are okay with risks. You are probably looking for different opportunities all the time. And I think it's a personality trait in there. So, I'll give an example. My ex-husband's an architect, as I mentioned before, and he worked at a big architecture firm and quite a few. Then he was laid off in the 2008 horrible time, and he started to work for himself. And he's a talented architect, I think, but he's not a business person. He's not an entrepreneur. And so I thought he would be better suited working for someone else. And I do think there is a structure. There are people that need that already built in structure, or they want it. And then there are people like me that I am not employable by anybody. I mean, listen, I have a lot of clients, right? I have a lot of bosses, but to consider myself in a day-to-day job working for another person as my VP or my CEO or whatever, it's unfathomable. And perhaps that is a trait of an entrepreneur, is that you wouldn't survive working within another organization.
Now, but at some point, obviously, when you were struggling and really early in your life, you did work for other people, not the things you wanted to do. Was that valuable?
Absolutely. I learned so much. And I actually loved a lot of the jobs that I did. I didn't become an entrepreneur or open my own business because I hated working for other people, but my desire for creating my own thing outnumbered the safety of a paycheck, of a salary, of the benefits, right? My creative brain was just I was indulgent to it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I had the same reason for a long time. I worked for a really good company, and life was very comfortable for me. And I kind of didn't like that at some point. But I felt I just wanted to have a different vantage point of life. But I never considered myself someone who would end up owning 3 businesses. I don't know. It's just, even now I don't really think about it that much. I'm like, it's just the version of life. This is like the 2.3.0 version of what I'm doing right. Who knows? I don't think I would ever go back, but things are different. What do you think about people who maybe never have had the opportunity to work for someone else in an organization, just kind of straight going to owning something? Is there a conflict with that, or maybe I don't know.
They're missing out on watching how other people lead and how other people operate their businesses, But if you are an entrepreneur, there is access to other entrepreneurs. I'm in entrepreneurs organization, which I love. There's YPO, there's Vistage, there's many different routes, but looking at how other people are doing what they're doing is really important.
Of course, most
Yeah.
definitely. Have you ever?
Experiencing it as an employee,
Yeah.
I think, is really important. I treat my employees like I wanted to be treated.
Yes.
And often I was treated well for the most part. Uh, but if I hadn't been an employee, I don't think I would have been able to understand empathetically what they might be going through.
Yeah, most definitely. Have you ever had someone who really badly wanted to be an entrepreneur and you just didn't see it in them?
I haven't, but
Interesting.
they haven't come into my realm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I mean, what is successful? Is it revenue? Is it a percentage of gross, right? I guess it depends on how you define success.
Well, what's the definition you see from a lot of people?
What is a successful entrepreneur?
Yeah, what's the definition that you most commonly see among people you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I think, revenue is definitely an indicator.
Mhm.
The gross profit, which we don't talk about, or the gross income, the net income,
Mhm.
we don't talk about. It's taboo. That is a great indicator of success and your ability to lead. Um, Happy employees, which again, you don't really have access to, except for if you're like combing through Glassdoor. I think the ultimate success for me as an entrepreneur is that I get to be my creative self fully, and I get to do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do it.
Yeah.
So my revenue is going to fluctuate. I mean, it fluctuated during the pandemic.
Yep.
And so the success for me is being consistent, being happy with being happy with the ups and downs of the business. I think
Yeah.
everyone would define it differently.
Yeah. It's interesting in our society. I always tend to think that it's very monetary for most people. I mean, it's like when somebody says, well, it's not about the money. You ever hear an athlete saying it's not about the money? It's usually always about the money for
Yeah, but I will say,
that.
for me, I could have a $50 million business and I might be miserable. I could have
Course.
$1 billion business and I might be just fine. Like for me, it really is the most I get out of being an entrepreneur is the pride in creating. And it has very little to do with how much money is flowing down to me. In addition, as an author, yeah, I like to see the numbers. I like to see that, we sold 6,000 or more
Yeah.
books. But it's not the money that's driving me, it's the impact that I'm making. And I may be impacting people and I'll never hear of it, but some
Mhm.
people are reaching out, and what they're showing me is way more valuable to me than the $6 to $9 I make on a book.
Yeah. What's the hardest lesson an entrepreneur has to learn or may learn in their journey?
Yeah, I think the hardest lesson to break free from is you got to detach your ego eventually in order to scale and grow your company. You have to step back and become the visionary and um, not work in your business day to day. And some people want to be the worker. Some
Mm.
people want to have a job in their business, but you can't scale and grow if you're working day to day in the marketing and the sales and the managing of people of your business. And also, if you're building a company to sell eventually, and even if you're not willing or not thinking about selling, something may happen in your life where you need to sell. So your business better be in the best shape possible, right? In order to sell it. And in being the best shape possible, you can't be responsible for more than 30% of managing people, of sales, and of marketing. You can be, you're just going to be acquired or bought for much less.
What do you say? Like, I'm going to piggyback off of what you just said. So, what do you say to people who are not inclined to want to scale their business or have this
Mhm.
big growth, and they just like to work in it. They just like to have their own thing.
Absolutely fine. There is nothing wrong in working day to day in your business if you love it, if it's really rewarding to you. There's no need to scale and grow a business if you don't want to.
Makes me almost think of like, you ever seen these restaurants that are around for like 30, 40 years? And there's not like a plan to have another restaurant. It's just
Mhm.
like that one place. And the same people are working there, the generations. I always think there's something beautiful about that in some
Yeah.
way, you know,
Yeah.
because
Especially in food business where
yeah,
the rate of profit is very low,
yes, the
like
margins are crazy. Like,
4 to
like
12% probably. I mean, I think I asked somebody recently what the average gross or the net income of a restaurant is, and they're like, depends, but 6% is good. I'm like,
yeah,
or not
like
good, but average. I'm like, why would anyone even bother? And the reason why they would um goes back to a lifestyle business.
yeah,
It pays for their lifestyle. There's not much more, fat on the bone, meat on the bone, and that might just be fine for them.
yeah. I think there's something amazing about that because I think sometimes it feels that it's always about growth. And sometimes maybe it's not. And sometimes it is. You know, it's
Yep. To each
I
his own. I
yeah,
don't have
it's
any
beautiful.
problem with an entrepreneur or business person running their business at a level that's comfortable to them and not expanding it.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting thing to say. I think sometimes people get pushed until you have to just always be running and push and push and
Yeah.
push. And this world's full of different people and different
Remaining
things.
flat, except for considering inflation,
Sure.
is fine.
I've never heard that from someone. That's really,
I
I
haven't
love
really
hearing that.
either, but maybe some of those
I
restaurants
haven't
that
heard that
you're
either.
mentioning have that mentality.
Yeah. I mean, it would make sense that you got to have different aspects of all things in life. You know, if everybody was reaching towards one thing, where's the variability, the diversity, and
Yeah.
different products? And restaurants, I know so many people who open restaurants and did it for a long time. I still think I don't understand this thing. I
That's
like
a lot of
restaurants,
work.
but I don't
That's
get
blood,
like the
sweat, and tears.
yeah.
I don't ever want to own one myself.
You're like there all day, like
Yeah.
literally there, like every day.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's an amazing thing. So, what do you think is the future of entrepreneurship as you see it? Like as we project in the future, obviously it's speculation. In your
Mhm.
point of view, where are we going? What do you think?
Well, hopefully it is increasing. So I remember in the 80s and 90s, I didn't hear the word entrepreneur. I know
Yeah.
it was in existence, but it also wasn't terribly sought after, highly sought after. In fact, if somebody didn't have a regular traditional job or didn't own like a family business, they called themselves an entrepreneur. It was kind of like saying, well, I'm between jobs, right? It wasn't very sexy. And now it's very hot,
It
right? To
is
be an
hot.
entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people graduating from high school don't necessarily need to go to a 4-year college,
Mhm.
right? They might want to go to a vocational college. They might want to go to junior college. They may want to just get experience in the world. But I wish that, and I hope that entrepreneurship is taught as an opportunity that you could choose.
Yeah, I
But it's
agree.
definitely not in high school. There's not a flag waving at every school saying, okay,
No.
entrepreneurship is a choice. So is the ROTC. So is junior college. So
Right.
is 4-year college,
Yeah.
right? You could be a dentist. It's not a job choice.
No, it's not. And I think also maybe how we are projecting it feels like the most grandiose version of it. That you're going to be this person that creates this $1 billion unicorn.
Yeah.
And like, it doesn't give you like the levels of it. It doesn't say though, maybe you will be the
Right.
one that's like flat. Maybe you're kind of mid-level. Maybe you'll be
Yep.
successful, not super wealthy. It just tells you like, you're going to be like this thing. You got to shoot for this thing. And I think it does a disservice
I
for that.
agree. I agree.
So hopefully that we would have something in a curriculum. I mean, hell, we need to teach people how to take care of their money. I mean, we're not even doing that in these
That is
situations.
true. That is true. I mean, now that you say it, I should probably go and volunteer at the high schools around me and give a talk. I don't
be the
know. Will
thing.
I upset their parents? Will I would it be a huge upheaval for the curriculum in the school?
Yeah.
I
Maybe. And
I
it
don't know.
sounds like logical.
They're like, don't let that Natasha Miller in. She's
Yeah.
going to fill your head with fluff.
Like logical information. How dare you give me logical things to better my life? No. You never know in schools now. You might be like, don't come in here. I don't want you teaching my child about
Yeah.
finances and entrepreneurship, and you can have your own job. No. Like, sounds absurd, but
It
I
does.
guarantee you somewhere that's a thing.
Yeah.
Somewhere
I'm
that's
sure.
a thing. It's
Yeah.
for sure. Well, Natasha, thank you so much for your time. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. You're just a lovely person. You seem
Oh,
like so
thank you.
down to earth, easygoing.
Yeah, that Midwestern foundation will never leave me.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing. And what an example of perseverance and believing in yourself and helping others. So I know this will help a lot of other people, of course.
Good.
And thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So tell us, before we go, tell everybody where they can contact you and the whole
Of
thing.
course.
Just do the role.
Go straight to, do not stop before you go to officialnatashamiller.com.
Official.
I know there's a whole reason. If anyone wants to know why my URL is that, you need to DM me. I'll tell you
Okay.
the story, but it's a secret.
Secret, not to be told here. That's how it works. Natasha Miller, everyone. Thank you so much.